But tonight, the next section of the Sermon on the Mount that we're going through, Matthew chapter 5, 21 through 32. So this section is where it kind of begins. It's a new kind of movement in the sermon. This is where Jesus goes through 6 different sayings about where he says, "You've heard it said, and I say to you," and he goes just like this back and forth kind of rhythm. 6 different paragraphs, and at first I was like, my brain was like, I wish it was 7. But then I found out it's actually kind of 2 clusters of 3. And so we will be doing the first 3 tonight. It will be talking about anger, and anger like murderously angry, lust, and divorce. So welcome to Kirkwood this evening. All the light topics we're going to be hitting on tonight. But with Jesus and the Sermon on the Mount, like these teachings are just on the ground, straightforward, good teachings. Like this is just the meat and potatoes of like following Jesus. This is the like manifesto, as we kind of described it, the constitution of the kingdom of heaven, this Sermon on the Mount. And so let's go ahead and read it right now, and then we'll dive right into it and break it down. So starting in Matthew chapter 5, beginning in verse 21. "You've heard it said that the ancients were told, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be guilty before the court.' I say to you that everyone who's angry with his brother shall be guilty before the court. And everyone who says to his brother, 'Raca,' shall be guilty before the Sanhedrin, and whoever says, 'You fool,' shall be guilty before Gehenna. Therefore, if you are presenting your offering at the altar, remember that your brother has something against you, leave your offering from before the altar and go, and first be reconciled to your brother, and then come and present your offering. Make friends quickly with your opponent at law while you're with them on the way, so that your opponent may not hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. Truly I say to you, you will not come out of there until you've paid the last quadrans. And you've heard it that it is said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. But if your right eye causes you to stumble, tear it out, throw it from you, for it's better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off, throw it from you, for it's better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. Now it was said, 'Whoever sends his wife away, let him give her a certificate of divorce.' I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife except for the reason of sexual immorality makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery." All right, let's dive right in, everyone. So to start off in that first section, Matthew chapter 5, 21 through 26. One more note of preface to this next section, because this whole section goes from 21 all the way down to the end of chapter 5, verse 48. It's important to note that Jesus is not supplementing these laws. What he's doing here is he's saying, this is what you've heard said, and I'm saying to you, this is the core of this law. That's kind of why the title of the lesson, the heart of it all. He's getting to what were these commandments supposed to be teaching you? And the problem is, what we'll see through many of these laws, they kind of use the laws, kind of a back door to just kind of scoot around the heart of the matter. And Jesus is trying to call us to a higher level of righteousness. Because remember the verse leading up to this? Look at chapter 5, verse 20. Everything prefacing this section. He says, "For I say to you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven." He's calling us to a higher and also a deeper understanding of these laws. And he's like, this is what this was trying to point to the whole time. And he's ramping it up. These are intense teachings of Jesus. But to start here, in the passage about anger, if you will, turn your attention down. I'm going to reread it here. Verse 22 has a really interesting pattern in the way that he teaches it. And I accidentally stumbled when I was reading because I had made a note to the side. I accidentally read my note instead of the direct translation. But we'll read it again here. Verse 22. He says, we'll start in 21. "You've heard it that the ancients were told, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be guilty before the court.' I say to you, everyone that is angry with his brother shall be guilty before the court. And whoever says to his brother, 'Raca,' shall be guilty before the Sanhedrin. And whoever says, 'You fool,' shall be guilty before the fiery hell." So did you see the kind of threefold repetition there? If you're angry, or if you're angry with his brother, guilty before the court. If you say to your brother, Raka, you will be guilty before the Sanhedrin. Whoever says, you fool, shall be guilty before the fiery hell. So this is really interesting. When I had this pointed out, it kind of opened up like how Jesus is ramping up the intensity of this law here, because it's a surprising reversal. Let me see if I can draw this out here. And again, I keep using the board and then commenting how like this section can't really see very well, but for all of you over here, observe. And then we'll leave it up here. You can check it after. So he starts with, what's the first thing that he says? He says, if you're angry with your brother. So if I was just to say angry brothers, what story in the Bible should you think of? Cain and Abel, right? Like angry brothers. The story of angry brothers. And how does that anger unfold? Murder. And that's kind of what Jesus is getting at here. Like it's that kind of anger. Like you see red. Like murderously angry. And like that's what Jesus is talking about here. What will they be guilty of? They'll be guilty before, right, the court. And then what's the second one? He says, anyone who calls his brother Raka, which is kind of like kind of the word for like idiot or like empty-headed. So if you call your brother a name like Raka, he says you'll be guilty before, and y'all might say the high court. It's the idea the highest court in the land was the Sanhedrin, and so that's what Jesus is talking. That's what Jesus is talking about here. Kind of spelling bee. Please hold. Sorry. Okay. Here we go. It's Heerin. Okay. Thank you. Sanhedrin. And then lastly, whoever calls his brother, bear with me, whoever calls his brother you fool will be guilty before the fiery hell, or literally the word is Gehenna, the fires of hell. Okay, so notice what's going on here. Murderously angry, calling someone empty-headed, like making a value judgment on them, like you empty-headed fool. Well, but then, this one, fool. Like, this is kind of actually decreasing in intensity of the crime or the offense that's being done. Murderously angry, empty-headed, fool. But then what happens over here? It increases on the punishment. Like, Jesus is trying to get a point across here. He's like, when you're angry or you're making some sort of value judgment on someone else's life, it's not good. Like the end of those things is death, is the point he's making. And so here's the way to look at it. As the offenses are decreasing, the consequence to each of those offenses is increasing in intensity. Does this make sense to y'all? Like this is actually like ramping up right here. As he's decreasing in the offense, it's increasing in the penalty or the consequence of that offense. Like this is just Jesus being a masterful teacher. And he's saying like, you got to stop it like all the way back here. Like you got to stop it right there. He's getting at the heart of this law. It is not just about murder. It's like you've got to deal with this problem of anger and even like making judgment calls on other people's lives. It's about cutting this passion off at the very source. Before like getting down, like not just saying like, well, I didn't murder anyone, so that's okay. He's like, no, you've got to stop in your heart, like making a judgment call on someone else, saying that they're a fool, they're empty-headed, or even being like murderously angry. Like Jesus is like, this is the level of intensity. This is the level of like of heart posture that God's trying to get this people to have through these laws. But then they just like fulfill this one law, and it's like, well, I didn't murder anyone, so we're good. He's like, you can still be rotten to the core and not be what God's calling you to be in these laws, but you think you're fine just because you didn't murder someone. He's like, nope, cut it out. Like we got to cut it off at the source, cut it off from the very beginning. And then the second part of this paragraph is about keeping the first things first. Because notice what he says, and this is just one of those things where it's an example of you kind of hear a passage where you've thought about the flow of a passage from your youth, and then it's like someone says something in a certain way, and it kind of like sparks it anew. I had just never read these two sections together. The idea that he is saying like this whole teaching in verse 22, and then when he says, therefore, if you are presenting your offering at the altar in verse 23, it's talking about if your brother has an offense against you, he's talking about what he just said. Like it's that simple, but it's just one of those moments I was like, oh yeah, there it is. Like that, this is all one flow of thought. Who would have thought? But apparently not me, because I got things locked away the wrong direction. But this is all one teaching. So this next part, when he says, if your brother has something against you, he's talking about that verse 22. If you've done one of these things that's offended your brother, and he has this against you, and you're going to offer at the altar, he's like, stop it. Cut it out. First, go and reconcile with your brother. Reconcile with your neighbor before you present your offering. And he's like, that's the most important thing, is what he's emphasizing here. This reconciliation between hostile neighbors, brothers and sisters. And he says, like, this is what you need to do first before you come and try to offer an offering to God. This is the important thing. And it's right there at the core of what Jesus is teaching, what we'll see later in this sermon, and what we'll see, well, we might reference it in a later lesson as well, but what Jesus says is the greatest command that all the other laws are subservient to. There's actually an article about it in the bulletin this week, if you want to read it. But it says, these two laws, everything else flows out from it. He's like, our love for God and our like ritual practice and sacrifice in the temple, he's like, that's meaningless if you're not loving your brother and reconciled to your brother. So he says, first go do that, then come and bring your sacrifice to the altar. Then you'll be ready to offer proper sacrifices to God. So first things first, love of God, love of neighbor, these two inseparable commands. There are two that are one. It's kind of like what we were talking about this morning. Because when they approached Jesus in the last week of his life, they say, what's the greatest command of the law? And Jesus just responds with two commands. He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. He says, on these two hang all the law and the prophets, and above them there's no other law. It's like the gasoline in a car. Like I can have the wheels, I can have the steering wheel, I can have the, like, now I've forgotten every part of a car. You can have like the seat that you sit in to drive, and if you don't have gasoline in that car, it's not going anywhere. It doesn't matter. That's what love is to like following Christ. It's the power that fuels everything else. Every other command is empowered by that, by the love of God and love of neighbor. So, emphasis on Jesus. He's increasing this intensity. As the offenses are decreasing, the consequences are increasing. And then, first things first, love your neighbor, and then you can offer proper sacrifices to God. Reconcile between hostile brothers. So, secondly, moving on into the section on lust. Let's read it again, verse 27 through 30. You've heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman and lusts for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And if your right eye makes you stumble, tear it out, throw it away from you, for it's better to you lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand makes you to stumble, cut it off, throw it from you, for it's better to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. Now, again, like, what's the repetition from what we've already seen? Like, intensity. Like, he's ramping it up. It's not just a matter of, well, I haven't actually done the deed, so it doesn't matter if I just kind of, like, cultivate lust in my mind. And what Jesus says here is he's like, nope. He's ramps it up. He's calling us to a higher standard. He's like, don't even look upon someone. Again, this isn't like just a passing glance kind of thing. This is the look that's like cultivating lust. The look that is like gazing intently at someone to fulfill your own desires. Because again, what's it doing? It is putting, similar to the passage on anger, it's putting a value on someone according to my own terms. In the anger, you're putting a value on someone's life. When you're angry, murderously angry with them, or you call them some sort of name, it's like when you kill someone, you're saying your life isn't worth living anymore according to my judgment. And Jesus is saying, like, when you're lusting, you're just cultivating someone for your own pleasure in your mind. Like, that's just what you're stirring up there. And he's like, no, don't do that. Like, stop. He's like, in fact, this is so intense. Like, cut out your eye if you need to, cut off your hand. Like, again, intensity language. He's turning up the heat, cranking it all the way to high, and he's like calling us to a higher level of righteousness. And that's what this sermon is. No one's going to come away from this sermon unchallenged. And so with this passage as well, I would like to point out just real quick that where is his emphasis when he talks about this problem of lust? Like, who's he directed it towards? Where is he pointing to? It's personal responsibility. Like, that's where he begins, first off. I'll just this isn't like across the board. I'm not saying there isn't a conversation to be had about like standards of modesty. But growing up, when I ever heard those lessons, they're always like kind of directed like just at the girls. And my guys in the room, like, the buck stops here with us. Like, this says, like, Jesus' solution to lust and like cultivating that, look out your eye. Like, that's where he starts at. That's where we need to start at too. And then the thing is when it comes to people who are like those who the personal responsibility, we're going to see this later in the sermon. If you will, look over into chapter 7, verse 1 through 5. He talks about the eye again. And there he says, don't judge so that you will not be judged. And for with what judgment you judge, you will be judged. And with what measure you measure will be measured back to you. And he says, why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but you don't notice the log that's in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take out that speck from your eye, and behold, there's a log in your own eye? He's like, you hypocrite, first take out the log in your own eye, and then you can see clearly to take out the speck in your brother's eye. And that's kind of what's going on here. Like, it starts with personal accountability. And the danger is like, this problem of lust is like rampant, like totally rampant in the world today. Because of like devices like these. I got a little flack for always mentioning the smartphone, but like this is like the greatest block to like spiritual development in the world today. Like is smartphones in our pockets. Because like you can just like right here on my phone, I could just be a few minutes away from free cultivation of lust through pornography. Like it's that easy. Like just 30 seconds. It's a danger. It's a real danger, and we need to like be on guard against it. Because Jesus is warning against that. It's like you need to be cultivating like a heart posture that sees everyone as a valuable image of God. Like that's the level that he's bringing us up to. And for all of us, like, you know, if we're going to call like guys to be leaders and like we're going to say like fathers are the head of the house, men are the leaders in the church, like we have a higher level of responsibility when you're the leader. That's why James talks about like don't let many of you become teachers. When you're lifted up, when you have an elevated position, whenever things go south, like there's a higher level of consequence when things go south. So he's like, cut it off. Again, cut it off at the source. Pluck it out, cut off your hand. The buck stops there. Start right there with yourself, and then like go forth from there and help others to see clearly as well. And then what I was just saying is, like, we have a higher level of responsibility, like, for what is within our control. That's where it begins, and that's where we start with what we can control, what's around us, and then from there we go forward. And when it comes to like conversations about modesty, like that's a real conversation that needs to be had. And like fathers, like you're the head of the house, you take care of that. And then for single guys like myself, like we have to take on like the responsibility of taking care of those thoughts. Like cultivating a heart posture that sees everyone as created in the image of God. Everyone is a reflection of the divine. And that's what Jesus is calling us to see. To be that people who are a city on a hill, a light of the world, that has a whole different way of viewing the world that the world is going to be drawn to. Like when people see the way that we treat others, we love others, that's what draws people to Christ. And it's that level of responsibility and righteousness that Jesus is calling us to in this sermon. That is, it's challenging. Like it is a challenge, especially today. Like this morning in Bible class, Ben brought up the point about how we are so saturated in all sorts of media and social media or news media, like 24-hour news media, ads, advertising. It's a whole world of just almost like propaganda to erase your mind from the most important things. And we got to fight against that. You got to rage against it. It's a practice. It's a type of rebellion against the kingdom of this world, to live in the ethic and the life of the kingdom of heaven. So, to carry on from here and to close out lastly with his teaching on divorce, let's read it again. It's 2 verses, straight, cut and dry. He says, verse 31, it says, "Now you heard that it was said, whoever sends away his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife except for the reason of sexual immorality makes her commit adultery. And whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery." Now, there's a little bit of circumstantial things that we have to talk about as to what's going on in Jesus' day. Because again, where's his emphasis in all of this? It's the leaders of the household, the husbands. We live in a very rare day and age where it is we live in a culture where everyone is available. Anyone could initiate a divorce. In Jesus' day, it was only the men who were able to initiate divorce. It was totally out of the control of the wife in the house. And that's the context of what Jesus is talking to here. And here's the thing. The law, the command that Jesus was talking about here, when he says that, he quotes right here from the passage in verse 31, "Whoever sends away his wife, let her give her a certificate of divorce." The command that Jesus is talking about, there was all these debates about what qualifies the reason to get a divorce? And there was kind of 2 camps in Jesus' day. One of them was where there's a phrase in the law of Moses where it says a reason of unwelcomeness, or something kind of the classic phrase is she burned the toast kind of thing. And it's if there's anything that upsets you, then you can get a divorce and separate from your wife. While the other camp said nope, there is no reason unless they break the covenant in sexual immorality or through a death. That was the 2 camps. Do you want to guess which one was more popular? Yeah. The one where you could just do it for any reason, willy-nilly. And Jesus is speaking into the debate, and he's saying no. This is the way you're supposed to live out this command. And again, it's calling to a higher level of responsibility towards the leaders of the household, and not just a way to throw away a marriage covenant. They're actually using the commands of the law to kind of circumnavigate it because of the hardness of their heart. And that's something that this comes up again later in Matthew. And Jesus says the same thing. He's it's because of the hardness of your heart that Moses said that. But he's we're supposed to be living in the way that it was since the beginning. He made them male and female. And he's that's the way it was. "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife, they shall become one flesh. What God has joined together, let not man separate." And so Jesus here is just straightforward calling. And again, it's kind of the heat's turned up on us guys. Because here's the thing. We do have a level of leadership, especially if you're leading a house or a home, or you're leading a community in a church setting, is leaders have a higher level of responsibility. That's just a fact. You go back and you read the prophets. Whenever things were going south, they addressed the people of the land of Israel. They were held accountable for their actions and their rebellion. But boy, whenever the prophets turned their attention towards the other false prophets, the priesthood, or the monarchies of their day, it went nuclear. They were it is your responsibility as the leaders of Israel, and you're held higher accountability because everything's going south. Because it's kind of as the leaders go, so goes the people. It's kind of generally how things go in life. Because what are we, what's the analogy that's used so often in the Bible? We are like sheep that have gone astray. Everyone has turned to his own way. Generally, we are seeking to follow someone. We look towards inspiring leaders, and we seek to follow, to have someone tell us what to do. There's kind of this inclination of most people just I wish I just knew exactly what to do in my life. And when we have a good leader, they can point you in the right direction. They can lead you in the right direction. But if it's a corrupt leader, things go south really fast. And that's what Jesus is just calling to, that same level of accountability. You go all the way back to the beginning. Who had the most problems, who had the most words addressed to them when things went south in Genesis 3, when the rebellion happened? The serpent had about big chunk of paragraph. Eve had about that much. Adam had more than both of them combined. because it was his responsibility to protect his bride. And like, that's what us guys are supposed to be doing. If you're leading a household, defend your kingdom, gentlemen. And it's like, if things go south, there's a higher level of responsibility on the heads of the household, the ones on top. And so Jesus is turning up the heat again on that. Again, that's where we're kind of like bringing it home here this evening. That's the heart of the matter. That's the heart of this teaching, and what we're going to continue to see as well in the next three, because these three kind of refer to like personal relationships and accountability to like neighbors, towards like our neighbors as well with cultivating lust, and then also towards like the household and like the household relationships. The next three also turn their attention more like big picture, talking about swearing oaths to God. And so these first three are about the neighbor's relationship. The next three are more about like our relationship to God and how we represent him out in the world. But this is the heart of the matter, is these laws that Jesus is talking about, that he's then digging down under, getting to the core of, the heart of the matter. Don't twist them. Like, don't try to use the laws to like skirt around it and be like, well, like, if you have to use the word technically whenever you're like, I technically didn't blank when it comes to the laws of God, that's a big like red flag, danger zone, like danger, danger, danger. It's like, look toward, meditate on his laws evening and morning, like that righteous man in Psalm 1. And what is the wisdom of God that's like the kernel of wisdom in the center of it? What's the heart of the law? And what do we see Jesus talking about here? Cutting it off at the source each time. Murderously angry. Like, don't even like call them names. Like, bring it all the way down to the bare bones of what God is trying to get at. And seek that higher righteousness, higher than the scribes and the Pharisees. And so that's the section of the Sermon on the Mount tonight. It's this is like this section, man, guys. It's one of the challenging ones, and I think it's a rampant one today, especially the idea of cultivating lust. Like, that's just something that is like, I would be shocked if anyone has never been exposed to some sort of adult content online. Like, it is that rampant. So let's stay on guard. Let's seek to have the higher level of commitment to the commands of God, as Jesus calls us to have at the Sermon on the Mount. These are just examples, right? Like, this is like teaching us how to read God's commands. And so as we go forth from here, all of the words that we'll be listening to from Jesus throughout the rest of the series and any other teaching that we have, let's seek to like go deeper, to dive deeper. What is God training us? What kind of heart is he training us to have? And let's follow him with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. But if there's anyone here tonight who, this has been a teaching-heavy sermon, but if there's anyone here tonight who needs to get on board with this, like this, these are the words of life that like Jesus is giving us in this sermon. He's giving us the way to live rightly in the world. He's giving us the commands that actually lead to our flourishing. Like, people who are living in anger, that are cultivating anger, people who are living and cultivating lust, people who are throwing away like lifelong commitments of a marriage covenant, like, they're like actually making for themselves like a form of torment right now. Like, it is not the way that we are made to live. And Jesus, God, knows the way that we were wired. These are the words of life that he's giving to us. And if there's anyone here tonight who needs to join in on that, we invite you to. And if there's anyone as well who's been convicted by this, that is like, I haven't been living this way, and this is how Jesus commands us to live, we invite you to come forward as well as now. But now is the day, now is the time of salvation. So if there's anyone who needs to respond to the lesson this evening, would you please come now as we stand and as we sing.